It's Wednesday, the 28th of August, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes, let's go. Story number 1, BHP appears to be on the hunt for acquisitions after posting a $14 billion or 20 billion Aussie dollar underlying profit for the 2024 financial year, but cutting dividends.
The result was slightly better than expected and the big Australian share price jumped more than 1% yesterday. The bottom line, or net profit, came in almost 40% lower at about $8 billion and included several impairments, including the group's Australian nickel mines. It's the third year in a row where BHP's dividend has come in lower, with a dividend payout ratio of just 54%. BHP is the world's biggest miner, and when you're talking about it, the numbers are huge. The company expects to spend about $10 billion this financial year on its Canadian Jansen Potash project. Last year, it paid almost 10 billion Aussie for Oz Minerals, and last month, more than $3 billion buying Argentinian copper assets. It also failed to buy Anglo American. It was prepared to pay about $75 billion for that one. While BHP has its digger in many commodities, there was a notable increase in copper earnings, for example. It's iron ore that is the big money spinner. It provided 71% of underlying earnings last year.
Sean, BHP's cut the dividend, meaning it has cash on hand. Where's it likely to spend it?
Iron ore is still a major focus, and the company is pushing ahead with its plans to grow exports from Western Australia to more than 300 million tonnes a year. But Chief Executive Mike Henry yesterday said the primary growth commodities for BHP are potash and copper. It's become much less enthusiastic about nickel and believes there will be a multi-year oversupply of the commodity. Analysts expect copper to be the main game for BHP, particularly since it didn't get its hands on Anglo American's copper assets. Capital spending on copper is much higher than iron ore, for example. Mr. Henry yesterday spoke about BHP's copper options in Australia and South America.
All right, moving on to story number 2 now. The Albanese government has cut international student numbers and will permit 270,000 new students next year.
Federal Education Minister Jason Clare announced the controversial cap on foreign student enrolments yesterday. Publicly funded universities will be allowed to enrol 145,000 new international students next year, about 15% more than last year, according to a report in The Australian. Vocational training colleges will only be given a quota of 95,000 new students. Non-university higher education providers can recruit about 30,000 students. Mr. Clare said universities would be allowed 15% more international students than they enrolled in 2019 before the pandemic. The total number of newly enrolled international students will be 7,000 less next year than in 2019, which of course was pre-pandemic.
Sean, story number 3. Huge rallies were held across the country yesterday in support of the CFMEU and against the government-appointed administrator of the union.
The federal government last week passed a bill giving it powers to force the union, which has been dogged by allegations of widespread corruption and links to organised crime, into administration. That's after it secured a deal with the coalition. Tens of thousands of construction workers protested in Melbourne outside Trades Hall Council there. There are tens of thousands in Sydney. Protesters labelled the Albanese government as fascist, led by Albanese. Ousted CFMEU New South Wales Secretary Darren Greenfield attacked the ACTU Secretary Sally McManus, accusing her of treachery and selling the union out. There were protests in Queensland and the ACT. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, he responded, warning that there will be consequences if people walked off the job to be part of the pro-CFMEU protests.
Story number 4, the cost of living crisis, Sean, is helping Coles achieve higher sales and earnings. But within the supermarket, shoppers are looking for bargains.
Sure are. In fact, 90% of Coles shoppers are changing their purchasing habits, and cheaper private label groceries are selling well. There's also a drop in red meat consumption, prompting a new phenomenon called Meat Free Monday. Shoppers are holding back on the booze. Sales at First Choice and Vintage Cellars liquor outlets continue to struggle. Coles Chief Executive Leah Weckert said customers are eating more at home and favouring promotional products and loyalty programs. Inflation is easing. That's good news, but it hasn't gone. Meat and bread prices have come down, as have prices of avocados and apples, but things like bananas and tomatoes are more expensive. And bad news, Michael, chocolate prices are about to go up.
Oh dear. All right, last one. Story number 5, Sean. The first earnings result of Mexican-themed fast food chain Guzman y Gomez as an ASX-listed company came in about as expected, with same-store sales growth for the first 7 weeks of this fiscal year above expectations.
Co-Chief Executive Stephen Marks said there had been strong demand for value offerings such as the $12 chicken mini meal, along with a rise in the breakfast category as more people headed to stores earlier in the day. The $8 breakfast burrito, bacon, chicken, chorizo, scrambled eggs, hash browns, sounds pretty good. It's growing in popularity with customers such as tradies. The drive-through outlets are busiest at that 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. period. Guzman's share price rose 3% yesterday. It's nearly 70% higher than its listing price back in June.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 28th of August, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.